The first sight, the Empire had ruled the stars for more than 1,000 years. World after world had bowed before its flag. Its fleets were countless, its armies endless, to most. The Empire seemed like forever, something that could never break. But forever was about to end on the edge of known space. Where starlight grew thin and cold, a patrol ship drifted. The crew was bored. Speaking in low voices, watching empty screens, they expected nothing but silence, nothing but dust and broken rocks. Yet on that day, something appeared, something no one had ever seen before. At first, the scanners caught only a shadow, a strange shape moving slowly across the dark. "Captain, do you see this?" A young officer whispered. The captain leaned forward, staring at the display. It was not a planet, not a moon, not an asteroid. It was a ship, but no ship they knew. It was larger than anything the patrol had seen. Its surface looked black, darker than space itself. No engines glowed, no signals flashed. It floated like a dead thing, silent and cold, but the crew could feel it watching, as if the ship itself was alive. The captain ordered scans, but the machines failed. No data, no readings, nothing. Maybe. "It's a wreck," one soldier said, trying to laugh, but his voice shook. Even a wreck should give something. Heat, metal, signal. This gave nothing. The patrol ship circled it, engines humming. Every eye fixed on the dark mass outside the window. It was smooth and strange, as if no hand had ever built it. Some said it looked ancient. Others said it looked new. But no one could decide. It was beyond all reason. Should we report this to command? The first officer asked. The captain paused, staring at the silent giant. Something in his gut told him yes, but another voice whispered no. What if command laughed? What if they thought he was weak? The Empire hated weakness, so he ordered silence. They would study the ship first, then decide. The patrol crew sent out probes, small machines flying close to the black surface. For a moment, nothing happened. The probes circled, flashing their tiny lights. Then, one by one, the lights vanished. Signal lost. The officer said, voice tight, "Try again," the captain ordered. More probes were sent. Again, they vanished. Not destroyed, not broken, just gone. Like they had never existed. The crew grew quiet. Only the sound of breathing filled the control room. The captain stared at the dark ship, his knuckles white. Then, the impossible happened. The black ship moved. No engines burned, no thrusters flared. It simply shifted, slow, silent, but clear. The patrol ship shook as if touched by a storm. Alarms rang, lights flashed. The crew cried out. But the captain stood frozen, for the first time in his life. He felt true fear. "Back away," he ordered, voice breaking. The patrol ship turned, engines pushing hard. But the black ship followed, not fast, not loud, just steady, always there, always behind them. "Why doesn't it fire?" Someone shouted. "Why doesn't it answer?" Another cried. No voice came, no signal, no threat, only silence. And silence was worse than war. At last, the patrol ship jumped to faster than light. Stars stretched into lines. The black ship vanished from sight. The crew gasped with relief. But the captain knew. He knew it was not over. When they reached the nearest station, the officers argued. Some wanted to tell command. Others begged for silence. Who would believe them? Who would listen? The Empire trusted only strength. And what strength could stand against that? The captain sat alone in his cabin. He replayed the vision in his mind. That dark shape, silent and watching. It had not fired, but it did not need to. He felt it deep in his bones. The ship was no wreck, no ghost, no trick. It was a weapon, and it was waiting, he whispered to himself. No one will believe us. And he was right. For in the heart of the Empire, men laughed at such fears. They thought nothing could break them. But far away, in the dark, the ship drifted still. And it was only the beginning. Whispers in the dark. The patrol ship returned to the nearest station. Its crew walked through the airlock with pale faces and shaking hands. They said nothing to the other soldiers, nothing to the merchants, nothing to the waiting officers. But silence itself was louder than words. Fear has a way of spreading, even when no one speaks at first. The story was only a whisper, a broken phrase over drinks, a muttered line in the corridors. They saw something in the dark. No details, no proof, just a feeling. But in the Empire, even feelings could grow into storms. The captain filed his report, short and clean. He wrote nothing about fear, nothing about the way the black ship moved. He called it an anomaly, a word that meant nothing. Command read the report and dismissed it. One officer even laughed. A dead hulk frightened them, nothing more. But still, the whispers spread. In the barracks, soldiers spoke of a shadow ship. They said it swallowed probes. That scanners failed to see it. They said it followed the patrol like a hunter, waiting. Each retelling made the story darker, sharper. Some swore the ship was alien. Others said it was not a ship at all, but a ghost of the old wars. The Empire had many old wars, and many old ghosts. On the trade routes, merchants shared the tale. They told it with laughter, but their eyes stayed nervous. Imagine it, one said, a ship darker than space, moving without engines. Another replied, imagine it following you, always behind, never gone. Even as they laughed, they checked their sensors twice that night. In secret chambers, admirals argued. One demanded more patrols, another demanded silence. The Empire cannot afford fear, one said coldly. Fear is weakness, weakness spreads. But another admiral whispered, if it is real, we must prepare. No one listened. The Empire had stood for 1,000 years. It had crushed rebellions, fought aliens, broken fleets. How could one ship matter? But in the outer colonies, strange things began to happen. Ships vanished without signals. Stations went dark without reason. Travelers whispered, the shadow ship is near. Every missing vessel added fuel to the fire, and the whispers grew louder. Some priests claimed it was a sign. The gods are punishing the Empire for its pride. They cried. Others said it was a test, a warning before a storm. Ordinary people listened and trembled, for in the heart of every man, there's a place where fear takes root, and that root was spreading fast. On one lonely world at the edge of space, a boy saw the black ship with his own eyes. He told his father, who told the town, who told the governor. By the time the news reached the next system, the boy had become a prophet. They said he saw a shadow bigger than the sky, silent and waiting. The governor dismissed it, but the people did not. Fear had become a story, and stories have power meanwhile. The patrol captain tried to sleep, but each night he saw the ship again, its black shape against the stars, its silence pressing on his chest. He told himself it was only metal, only a machine. But deep inside he knew the truth. It was not just a machine, it was something else, something greater, and it was watching. Command finally sent a fleet, not to destroy the ship, but to silence the rumors. Let the people see our strength, the admiral said. They will. Forget their foolish fears. But the patrol captain begged them, do not go near it. It is not what you think. They ignored him. The Empire always ignored fear. And the whispers followed the fleet into the dark. The people of the Empire waited, some in hope, some in dread. They watched the skies for news. They prayed that their ships, their mighty fleets, would return in glory. But in their hearts, many already knew the truth. Something ancient had awakened, and the Empire had no idea what it faced. In the taverns, soldiers whispered, in the dark, there is a shadow in the dark. There is a ship. It does not speak. It does not fall. And those who see it never return. And still, in the endless night of space, the black ship drifted, silent, patient, waiting. Every whisper carried its name farther. Every rumor made it stronger. And though the Empire mocked the stories, the shadow had already entered their hearts. No one knew it yet, but fear itself was the first weapon, and the shadow ship had already fired it. The first attack, the fleet gathered like a storm across the stars. Hundreds of Imperial warships lined up in perfect formation. Engines glowed like suns, weapons shone with deadly light. This was the Empire's pride, the iron fist that had crushed rebellions and destroyed entire worlds. Now it moved toward one single ship. The shadow ship waited, silent and alone. It did not run, it did not hide. It floated in the dark like a hunter that had already chosen its prey. From the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Corrin smiled. "This will be quick," he said. His officers nodded, their voices full of confidence. No one believed a single ship could stand against the might of the Empire. The order came, all weapons, prepare to fire. Across the fleet, cannons charged, missile bays opened. Energy beams began to hum, the sky lit up with power. The dark ship did not move. It only watched. "Fire," the Admiral commanded, and the galaxy shook. Thousands of weapons released at once. Blazing light tore across the void. Missiles screamed. Beams cut the darkness, the space around the shadow. Ship burned brighter than a star. The officers cheered, convinced the battle was over. But when the light faded, the cheering stopped. The shadow ship was still there, untouched, not a mark, not a scratch. It floated calmly, as if nothing had happened. Fear slid into the Admiral's chest, cold and sharp. What is it made of?" One officer whispered. No one answered. Then the ship moved. Slow at first, then faster. No engines glowed, no sound, no warning. It simply drifted between the Imperial lines, and wherever it passed, ships began to die. The first cruiser exploded. Without reason, one moment alive, the next gone. Another ship cracked apart like glass. A battleship folded in on itself, crushed by invisible hands. The fleet fired again, but their shots curved away. Energy beams bent, missiles vanished. It was as if the void itself obeyed the shadow ship. Panic spread through the fleet. "Fall back," captains cried. "Regroup, regroup," shouted others. But their voices shook. The Imperial formation shattered. Warships turned and twisted, fleeing in every direction. But the shadow ship followed, silent, patient, unstoppable, inside the flagship. Admiral Corrin gripped the command chair. "Keep firing, keep firing." He roared, but his words were empty. No shot touched the enemy, no weapon made a difference. One by one, the ships he commanded were torn apart. His fleet, his pride, his power, all destroyed in moments. The crew of the flagship stared in horror. As the shadow ship drew closer, it had no guns, no cannons, no fire, and yet it killed with ease. "What is it?" The Admiral whispered. The silence gave him no answer. A sudden wave of force slammed through the flagship. Lights died, engines failed, alarms screamed. Men and women fell from their stations, screens went dark. Only the shadow ship filled the window. For a brief second, the Admiral thought he heard something. Not a voice, not words, but a feeling. A whisper inside his mind, small and cold. "You do not belong." And then the flagship broke. Steel twisted, glass shattered, the great vessel split into pieces. The Admiral's last breath was a scream swallowed by the void. All across the sector, people waited for news. They expected victory. They expected another tale of Imperial strength. Instead, silence returned. No ships came back. No voices answered. Only rumors flew faster than light. Merchants whispered in secret. "The fleet is gone." Soldiers muttered in fear. Not a single one returned. On distant worlds, children asked their parents, "Is the shadow ship real?" And no parent could answer. In the great halls of the Empire, the leaders argued. Some claimed the fleet was lost to a black hole. Others said it was an accident, a trick, a lie. But in the dark, every soldier knew the truth. Something was out there, something that could not be fought, and the whispers spread once more. Louder than before, across the stars, people began to wonder if the Empire's strongest fleet had fallen in moments. What hope did anyone else have? And still, the shadow ship drifted, silent, patient, watching, waiting for the next move, waiting for the next world, waiting for the end. Fear across the stars. The Empire had always been a wall of iron. When whispers of rebellion rose, the wall crushed them. When alien fleets appeared, the wall broke them. For 1,000 years, the empire was fear, and fear was the empire. But now, fear had turned against it. The great fleet never returned. Families waited at spaceports, watching the skies for ships that never came. Messages were sent, unanswered. Signals cried out. Only silence replied. One by one, the stars of the empire grew quiet, and in that silence, fear was born. At first, the officials tried to lie. They told the people the fleet was delayed. They claimed the admirals had taken a secret mission. They said the empire was safe, but rumors travel faster than truth, and the rumor was death. In the marketplaces, merchants whispered, "They say the shadow ship cannot be hurt." On transport ships, travelers muttered, "They say it kills without firing." In the taverns, soldiers drank in silence. "They say it ended the fleet." In moments, the whispers grew louder each day. No one could stop them. The priests spoke next. Some declared it was judgment. "The gods have sent a shadow to punish pride," they cried. Others claimed it was a demon from beyond the stars. Something ancient, something endless. People began to pray again. Old shrines were lit with candles. Forgotten gods were called by name. Even the strong began to bow their heads in fear. The emperor himself addressed the people. From his golden throne, his voice rang across the empire. "There is no shadow ship," he declared. "Our fleets are strong, our power eternal, our enemies weak." But the people did not believe him. Not this time. They had seen too much silence. They had heard too many whispers. In the military academies, young cadets asked their teachers, "Is the shadow real?" The teachers shouted at them, "Do not speak of such lies." But when the lights dimmed, even the teachers whispered, "What if it is true?" On a mining world at the edge of the empire, an old man told a story. He claimed he had seen a ship like this once before. In his youth, a black shape in the sky, silent, watching. He said it vanished after destroying a war fleet. The miners laughed at him, but their laughter was thin, because deep inside, they wondered if the old man was right. In secret, the admirals met, their voices sharp, their eyes full of fear. One shouted, "We must build stronger weapons," another whispered, "Weapons mean nothing if the enemy cannot be touched." The council divided. Some wanted to fight, some wanted to hide, some wanted to deny. But none had answers. The shadow had already won, not with fire, but with fear. For across the empire, soldiers could no longer sleep. They woke at night, dreaming of black shapes outside their windows. Captains stared at the stars too long, waiting to see if something moved. And ordinary people, simple farmers and merchants, looked up at the sky with dread, because the sky was no longer safe. On one world, a child cried out in the night. He said he saw a shadow in the heavens. His mother comforted him, saying it was only a dream. But when she looked out the window, she too froze. Something dark had moved against the stars. By morning, half the town was whispering the same story. The shadow ship was near. The empire tried to tighten control. Censors erased stories. Soldiers arrested those who spoke too loudly. But suppression only made the whispers stronger. Fear thrives in darkness, and the empire had built the perfect cage for it in the far colonies. Some worlds began to rebel, not against the empire, but against the silence. Governors refused orders, demanding truth. Citizens refused taxes, saying they would not feed a dying throne. Even loyalists began to question, if the empire's fleets could fall in moments, then what protection did the throne give? Meanwhile, the shadow ship drifted. It did not strike every world. It did not need to. It appeared only sometimes, in distant skies. Always silent, always watching, and that was enough. Entire planets shook at the rumor of its approach. Ships refused to travel near the edges of space. Trade collapsed. Trust collapsed. Hope collapsed. For the first time in 1,000 years, the empire felt small. Its people felt alone. Its soldiers felt weak. The shadow ship had not destroyed the empire's heart yet. It had only touched the edges. but the ripples spread across the stars, and in every ripple was the same truth. The empire could end, and though no one spoke it aloud, all across the galaxy the same thought grew. If the shadow ship ended the fleet in moments, then how long would it take to end the empire itself? The desperate gamble the empire was breaking, not from fire, but from silence. Worlds no longer trusted the throne. Soldiers no longer trusted their leaders. Merchants whispered of empty trade routes. Priests spoke of judgment. Children cried. At shadows in the sky, fear had spread faster than any fleet, faster than any army, and fear was something the emperor could no longer control. So at last, the emperor gave a command. A command spoken with iron teeth, spoken with rage. Gather everything. He said, every admiral, every scientist, every weapon. It was not a plan of confidence, but of desperation. The empire would make one final stand. Secret orders spread. Across the stars, factories lit up, forges burned, labs thundered with energy. Forbidden projects, locked away for centuries, were reopened. Machines once thought too dangerous, too unstable, too cruel, were pulled from the dark. Entire worlds were drained of their power, minds stripped bare, cities forced into silence. The empire demanded sacrifice, for the shadow ship had given them no choice. In hidden labs, scientists worked until their hands bled. They built weapons that bent light, machines that tore holes in space, cannons that could split a planet. They spoke in whispers. Themselves, will this be enough? But none dared answer, for all of them had seen the reports. The fleet destroyed in moments, the weapons swallowed by silence. On distant planets, armies gathered. Millions of soldiers stood in endless ranks, chanting the emperor's name, but behind their voices lay doubt, for they all knew that guns, ships, and bombs had already failed, and the shadow ship was still waiting. Some admirals argued against the plan. They said no weapon could harm the dark ship. They begged the emperor to hide, to retreat, to wait. But the emperor slammed his hand upon the throne. An empire does not hide, he roared. An empire fights until its last breath. And with those words, the desperate gamble was sealed. The greatest fleet ever built rose from the shipyards. Not hundreds, but thousands of vessels, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, each bristling with new weapons, each armed with forbidden power. Entire moons had been carved into engines of war. Stars themselves had been drained to feed. The weapons, it was no longer just a fleet. It was the empire itself, carried upon steel wings. The people were told the truth at last, not that the shadow ship was invincible, but that the empire had created its answer. Propaganda filled the air. The dark will fall. The broadcast promised, the emperor has forged the blade to cut the shadow. Crowds cheered, but their eyes were hollow, for deep inside, no one truly believed. The shadow ship remained silent. It did not run. It did not hide. It drifted in the same lonely place, waiting, almost as if it knew the empire would come, almost as if it wanted them to. The admirals planned in secret halls. Maps glowed across the tables. Fleets moved like pieces on a board. We will strike with everything. One said, do not hold back, do not wait. Others nodded, though their hands trembled. They remembered the first fleet. They remembered the silence that swallowed it. But pride forced their tongues to move. This time we will win, they said, though even they did not believe it. And so the preparations spread. Worlds emptied their stores, ships filled their fuel, soldiers sharpened their blades. The empire bent all its weight, all its fury, all its hope into this final strike. It was no longer about victory. It was about survival, for if this failed, there would be nothing left. In the night before departure, many could not sleep. Some soldiers wrote letters to families they would never see again. Some captains walked the halls of their ships, whispering prayers to stars that did not answer, and some simply stared out the windows, wondering if the shadow ship was already watching them. The emperor himself stood alone in the throne chamber. He looked at the golden walls, the banners of victory, the statues of power. For the first time in his reign, He wondered if it all meant nothing. For the first time, he asked himself if the Empire could die. But he crushed the thought. An emperor does not doubt, an emperor commands, and he commanded war. At dawn, the great fleet rose, engines thundered. Lights filled the skies, worlds trembled beneath the weight of ships. Citizens gathered to watch, their voices lifted in empty cheers. They called it the final Armada, the blade of the Empire, the last hope. And as the ships vanished into the dark, silence returned to the worlds. A silence heavier than fear. A silence that asked one question. If the fleet fails, what will be left? Far away, the shadow ship drifted, silent, patient, waiting, as if it had always known this day would come, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. The fall of the Empire, the final Armada, arrived at the edge of the dark. Thousands of warships spread like a sea of fire across the stars. Engines burned, cannons glowed, banners of the Empire shimmered on every screen. It was the greatest gathering of power the galaxy had ever seen, and it was marching toward one single shadow. The black ship floated in silence. It did not move. It did not hide. It waited, as if this moment had always belonged to it. From the flagship, Admiral Tehran looked at the dark shape and forced a smile. "Today," he said, "the Empire shows the galaxy that nothing can defeat us." His officers cheered, though their eyes betrayed fear. The order was given. All weapons, full power. Fire on my command. The Armada roared with energy. Cannons hummed, missiles primed. Super weapons lit up the void. The sky blazed brighter than a star. The black ship was surrounded, trapped in the middle of the storm. "Fire," the Admiral commanded, and the galaxy exploded. Blinding light tore through space. Beams cut across the void. Missiles screamed in endless swarms. The silence of the stars became thunder. The Armada poured every weapon it had into the shadow. Worlds trembled as their power was drained to feed. The fight. This was the Empire's rage. This was the Empire's final strike. But when the fire faded, the cheering stopped. The shadow ship was still there, untouched, unharmed, unbroken. It floated in the center of destruction. Calm and silent, not a single scar marked its surface. The Armada had given everything, and it had meant nothing. Fear ripped through the fleet. Some captains shouted to fire again. Some screamed to flee. Others sat in silence, unable to speak. Admiral Tehran clenched his fists until blood ran down his hands. "This is impossible," he whispered. But the void gave no answer. Then the shadow ship moved. Not fast, not loud, but with a silence that crushed hearts. The great Armada shook. Alarms screamed across 1,000 bridges, and then the killing began. One battleship twisted apart, torn by invisible force. A cruiser folded into itself like paper. Entire squadrons vanished in waves of dark light. No weapon touched the shadow ship. No shield stopped its power. It was not war. It was execution. On the flagship, officers shouted in panic, "Regroup the fleet. Hold the line. Keep firing." But there was no line left to hold. The formation broke like glass under a hammer. Ships scattered in every direction. But the shadow ship reached them all. It did not chase. It did not hurry wherever it moved. Destruction followed. A dreadnought, the size of a city, unleashed its planet-killer cannon, a beam meant to tear moons apart. The shot lit the void with fire, and yet, as it touched the shadow ship, the light bent away. The cannon that had once ended worlds had no effect, and a moment later, the dreadnought split into pieces. Millions of lives ended in silence. The Emperor himself watched from the throne. A giant screen filled with the battle's chaos. He sat, frozen, his lips pale, his eyes wide. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Emperor of the galaxy felt powerless. He whispered to himself, "How can one ship do this?" But even he knew the truth. This was no ship. This was judgment. One by one, the stars of the Armada went dark. First hundreds, then thousands. Entire fleets died in moments. The silence after each explosion was heavier than the blast itself. Admirals fell silent. Captains fell silent. Soldiers fell silent, for there was nothing left to say. In less than an hour, the greatest armada in history was gone. The Empire's pride, its power, its hope, all ended. The shadow ship drifted in. The ruins, untouched, patient, watching, as if the battle had meant nothing, as if the destruction of 1,000 ships was only a breath to it. Across the galaxy, signals of the defeat spread. Stations wept, colonies trembled, cities screamed. For the first time, every citizen understood. The Empire could end, and it was ending now. The Emperor sat upon his throne in silence. Banners of victory hung heavy above him, but they looked like lies. His empire was burning, and he could not stop it. He had gambled everything, and everything was gone around him. The great palace shook as riots began in the streets. The people had lost their fear of the throne, for a greater fear had taken its place, and above all of it, the shadow ship drifted on. It did not claim worlds, it did not speak, but everywhere it went, empires crumbled. Its silence was louder than war, its patience more powerful than armies. The empire of 1,000 years had fallen, and it had fallen in moments. The truth revealed: the empire was gone. Its fleets had turned to dust. Its palaces had fallen to silence. Its banners lay in ash. What had taken 1,000 years to build had ended in only hours. Across the galaxy, the survivors whispered in fear, for no one truly knew what had destroyed them, only that it was not human, not anything they understood. In the ruins of broken stations, soldiers told stories. They said the shadow ship did not kill with weapons, but with will. They said it bent the laws of the stars, twisted light, bent time. Some claimed it was older than the Empire itself, a relic drifting in silence, waiting for arrogance to awaken it. Others swore it was alive, not a machine, but a creature that fed on pride and power. Each voice added a new shape to the legend, and no two tales were the same. Merchants carried these stories from world to world. At first, they spoke in whispers, fearful of the censors, but the censors were gone. The Empire was gone, so the stories spread. Children asked their parents, "What was it?" And no parent had an answer, only the same fearful truth. No one knew what that ship was. In the temples, priests declared victory for their gods. One religion said it was divine judgment. Another called it the hand of a forgotten god of silence. Some said it was the final test of mankind. The weak destroyed, the humble spared, but no god appeared, and the shadow ship gave no sign. It only drifted on. In the ashes of the palace, the emperor's advisors fought among themselves. Some wanted to surrender to the shadow, but how can one surrender to silence? Others wanted to rebuild, but what walls could stand against something that broke stars? At last, even they fell into silence, for power meant nothing now. The shadow ship had taken more than fleets. It had taken the meaning of power itself. Among the common people, a different belief grew, that the shadow ship was not death, but a warning, a reminder that no throne lasts forever, a reminder that empires rise and empires fall. Perhaps it had come to show them the cost of arrogance. Perhaps it had come to free them from chains. But even those who hoped did so with trembling voices, for the shadow ship gave no answers. On one ruined world, an old woman told a tale to children huddled by the fire. She said the ship had visited her world long ago, before the empire rose. She said it always came when rulers grew too proud. She said it always ended them. The children asked her, "Will it come again?" She only looked to the stars and whispered, "It always comes again." The shadow ship drifted far from the core worlds. It did not hunt. It did not conquer. It simply waited, silent, patient, endless, and yet, everywhere, its presence was felt. Every captain looked twice at the void before jumping. Every soldier feared the dark more than the enemy. Every leader dreamed of a black shape against the stars and woke in sweat. Some believed the ship would one day vanish, that it would sleep again until another empire rose. Others believed it would never leave, that it would follow mankind forever. A reminder carved into the fabric of the universe, that power is never eternal. In time, Songs were written of it, stories carved into stone. Generations would tell their children. Once there was an empire, strong and proud, but it ended in moments because of a ship no one understood. The shadow ship became legend. But legends can be more dangerous than truth, for legends never die on the edge of known space. A scout ship once reported a strange sight, a black shape drifting against the stars. Silent, endless, watching. The crew did not approach. They turned away, hearts heavy with fear. They sent no report to command. They spoke no word to their leaders, but when they sat together that night, they all knew the same truth. It was still there, waiting. No one ever truly learned what the ship was. Some said it was alien. Some said it was a ghost of a dead universe. Some said it was the universe itself, correcting what had grown too arrogant. But all agreed on one thing: it was the end of the empire. And it had ended them in moments. The galaxy was quiet now. Worlds struggled to rebuild, to find new leaders, new paths. But above all of them, one fear remained. One whisper carried across every world, every station, every ship. What if the shadow ship returns? And if it does, who will be next?